Did you just get an airbrush and don't know where to start? Here are some things you can try. Zenithal Highlight. This is probably what sold you on getting an airbrush in the first place. Everything I paint first starts out with the Zenithal Highlight. They help with shading when you use contrast paints or glazes, and can help you see details. And it's really easy to do. You first prime your mini with a primer. I use Pro Acryl Dark Neutral Gray. I've used other primers for airbrushing, and this one is always smooth and never clogs. 10 out of 10, would recommend. You may need to add a drop or two of an airbrush thinner if you have a small nozzle size. Use a white primer or, if you can, a white ink. They give a smoother finish and don't need thinning. I typically use a Liquitex white ink or Dollar & Rowney. Just whichever I can find in the craft store. And I spray from above. This is to simulate a light source. I like to spray it around a 45-degree angle from different directions. Be aware though, inks can be very delicate, so if you use a white ink, you should let it sit ideally overnight before you start painting. If you go directly with the wash or dry brushing, the paint will strip right off of the mini all the way back down to the plastic or resin. On the other hand, you can spray a layer of varnish over the whole thing and get to painting right away. If anyone has a suggestion for a good matte varnish that doesn't clog very easily, I'd love to know. I like to dry brush with white after zenithaling to really make the edges and high points pop. This is optional though. Make sure to clean your airbrush after and in between switching colors. Get some water in the cup and block the end to have the water flow back into the airbrush. Then pour it out. Do that a few times before filling it again with water and then spraying it all out until it runs clear. Your airbrush can get extremely clogged quickly if you don't do this. You'll probably get clogs regardless of what you do anyway, and if you do, take off the nozzle, take a small needle that can fit through the point of the nozzle, and carefully push any clogged paint through the end. I like to keep my needle in a little cork on my desk. Inks or contrast paints. Another easy thing to try airbrushing is inks or contrast paints over a Zenithal Highlight. This is perfect for a mini where a main color predominates, things like armor, skin, or really cool shop towels. Take an ink or a contrast paint, add some to the airbrush, and very lightly go over a Zenithal mini. It will tint the Zenithal Highlight into whatever color you're spraying, giving you a professional look in minutes, or giving you a very solid foundation for highlights with a brush. I'm a big fan of low effort, high reward, and this is about as low effort, high reward as you can get. This works amazingly well for painting vehicles quickly. If your colored base coat went a little bit overboard, you can always do spot highlights with a lighter color. I do this typically with skin or armor. In this case, I want to paint Raptor colors on this Republic Commando Space Marine looking fellow. To mix paints so they can be used in an airbrush, add a few drops of airbrush thinner, and then add paint and mix until you get a skim milk consistency. I start with Castellan green and spray directly at the model. Then I take some Strachan green and, just like when applying at Zenithal, spray it on from above. With a little of the Strachan green left in the airbrush cup, I add a few drops of white or off-white ink and mix that in with an old brush. Then I do little spot highlights on areas that would be the brightest, like his head, shoulder pads, or backpack. I think it gives a great smooth blended look. I like to do this with skin too, like on my forest sprites. Just like before, this gives a fantastic base for more highlights if you want to refine things later. Again, vehicles are perfect for practicing this with an airbrush. OSL. OSL. Object source lighting is one of those things that looks really impressive, but actually isn't that hard to do, especially with an airbrush. You'll want to make a very thin mix of your glow color in the airbrush cup. To do that, put some water or thinner into the airbrush cup first, followed by a bit of the glow paint. I like to test the opacity of the paint by spraying onto my glove. After that, carefully aim and barely pull back the trigger on the brush. If you have a single action airbrush, just turn the flow way down. Doing OSL like this can be very scary since you're probably going to be applying this as one of the last steps after the mini is basically fully painted. But if you mess up, you can always paint over it with whatever color was underneath. I also recommend practicing a little bit on a piece of paper beforehand to get a feel for aiming the brush and lightly pulling the trigger. I like to go in after spraying with a brush and make brighter edge highlights to make the OSL pop just a little bit more. After every use of the airbrush, I take it apart and put the main body, nozzle, and needle into an ultrasonic cleaner and leave it there in the water until the next time I use it. I got this tip from Tabletop Minions and it's been a game changer. And there you go. Those are just a few starting points to get your airbrush journey going. Just be brave and try it. I'd love to see what you do. Feel free to like and subscribe if you found this helpful. Comment down below with any feedback or suggestions. Alright, bye-bye.